Welcome back to Latin Fluency Presents, Guardians of the Word, the series that traces how the great works of the ancient world survived fire, flood, and forgetting. In our first episode, we stepped into a library beyond time, a space where every scribe and scholar who ever lived stood shoulder to shoulder, guarding the wisdom of the ancients. Today, we return to Earth, to the world of parchment, papyrus, and patience, a world where the act of writing was survival itself. This is episode 2, Scribes, Scholars, and Survival. If you could travel back to the 2nd century after Christ, long before the printing press, long before universities, you might hear the faintest of sounds, the scratch of a reed pen across papyrus. A slave or a freedman, working in the copy room of a Roman household, would spend hours reproducing the words of Cicero or Livy. He didn't know that his work would carry those authors into eternity, only that a missed line might earn punishment. Books were copied by hand, one at a time. Each stroke of ink was a heartbeat. Every letter had to be formed, tested, and trusted. There were no libraries as we know them. Only collections, personal and precarious, where a single worm, a single spark, could silence a voice forever. Yet still they wrote. And in those quiet rooms, literature became a living inheritance, passed by touch. The earliest Greek and Latin works were written on scrolls, papyrus rolls that unspooled horizontally as you read. But as the Roman world expanded, so did the desire for efficiency. By the 2nd century, a new form appeared. The codex, folded sheets of parchment sewn together, the ancestor of the modern book. It was a small revolution. You could write on both sides, flip quickly between sections, and carry far more text in less space. The codex didn't just change how books were read. It changed how they survived. Papyrus was fragile, easily destroyed by moisture. But parchment, made from animal skin, could endure centuries. And so, by chance and necessity, the book as we know it became the Guardian's greatest tool. Reynolds and Wilson remind us that this moment, this shift from scroll to codex, was not only technological, it was spiritual. It made the act of reading more personal, and the act of preservation more intimate. But the human hand is imperfect. Every manuscript was a new creation, and with each copying came the risk of corruption. Letters blurred, margins filled with guesses. A tired scribe might repeat a line, or omit an entire passage when his eye jumped across the page. Over time, these small mistakes multiplied like echoes in a canyon. The text that reached the Middle Ages was never quite the text that left the hand of the author. To preserve was also to transform. And yet, these so-called mistakes are what allow modern scholars to reconstruct the past. Each variation tells a story, a moment of inattention, a change in style, a hint of the human. The manuscript, then, is not just a copy. It is a conversation between the living and the dead, between one reader and the next. While scribes worked in silence, teachers worked aloud. Roman education revolved around the reading of classical texts. Students learned grammar by copying lines from Virgil, memorized rhetoric through the speeches of Cicero, and argued philosophy in the language of Seneca. Education became the lifeline of literature. Without classrooms, the classics would have perished. And without the classics, education would have lost its heart. As Reynolds and Wilson note, the survival of texts was inseparable from the survival of learning itself. Each schoolmaster, each student, was another link in the chain, an unwitting guardian, keeping language alive through repetition, recitation, and reverence. Then came decline. The Roman Empire fractured. Libraries burned or were abandoned. Knowledge retreated into the margins of the world. But in those margins, in quiet cloisters and mountain monasteries, the guardians persisted. They wrote by candlelight. copying what little remained of the ancient world. Their script was slower now, their ink thicker, their letters rounder. The beginning of medieval handwriting. These monks did not see themselves as historians. They were servants of God. Yet in their service, they became servants of humanity. They preserved not only scripture, but Cicero, Virgil, Ovid, and even the pagan poets, whose verses would later shape the Renaissance. Through their ink, the ancient world lived again. To copy a book by hand is to believe in its worth. The scribes didn't just transmit words. They transmitted faith in meaning itself. They teach us something profound. That civilization is not a monument, but a conversation, fragile, continuous, alive. Today, our tools are different. We type, we scan, we upload. But the task is the same. To guard the word, to keep it from vanishing into noise. We are all of us still scribes. In the next episode, we'll follow the Guardian deeper into the Middle Ages, to the monasteries that became Europe's memory, and the monks who, without knowing it, saved civilization itself. Because every candle lit in a scriptoria was a promise. That light would never go out. Guardians of the Word is a Latin Fluency original series, written and produced by John Ricard, inspired by scribes and scholars by L.D. Reynolds and N.G. Wilson. Learn more at latinfluency.com, where ancient words live again.